So, within the last half hour, President Obama has ruled out any return to combat activities by American troops in Iraq. It's taken him 10 days to do it, but he has suggested that targeted and precise military action could be agreed if the situation required it. Perhaps a hint that special operations forces could be deployed. Let's go straight to Washington and our correspondent, Kylie Morris.
The president has chosen not to do nothing, but neither is he doing very much. No combat troops, instead hundreds of military advisors.
We're prepared to send a small number of additional American military advisors, up to 300, to assess how we can best train, advise, and support Iraqi security forces going forward.
So advice, but no airstrikes for now, although the president reserved the right to launch targeted strikes as the situation demands.
We will be prepared to take targeted and precise military action if and when we determine that the situation on the ground requires it. So the most important question we should all be asking, the issue that we have to keep front and center, the issue that I keep front and center, is what is in the national security interests of the United States of America.
The president's analysis so far in line with America's former top general in Iraq.
This cannot be the United States being the Air Force for Shia militias or a Shia on Sunni Arab fight. It has to be a fight of all of Iraq against extremists.
If, though, the president does choose airstrikes in the future, U.S. military inside Iraq could help to fill an intelligence gap, as special forces did in the last war.
Special forces prepare the ground for another wave of airstrikes.
They could provide information from the ground for manned aircraft launched from one of the world's largest warships, the USS George H.W. Bush. It remains poised in the Gulf to provide strategic support and has in the past days launched reconnaissance flights over Iraq. But for now, the president has heeded warnings from his most senior military advisors. The situation is too complex, the possibility of error too great for airstrikes.
Forces are very much intermingled. It's not as easy as looking at an iPhone video of a convoy and then immediately striking it. The options will continue to be built and developed and refined and the intelligence picture made more accurate, and then the president can make a decision.
But it's not only America's generals who are reluctant to re-engage in Iraq, so are the American people. At least those visiting the Vietnam War Memorial in Washington today, lingering over the columns of names carved into the basalt of soldiers whose lives were sacrificed for that long and costly war. Should their president return U.S. military power to fix the crisis in Iraq?
I mean, just to walk in there again and try to do something when we already failed the last 2 times was really, I don't think it's worth it. Because they're going to fight anyway. When we leave, they're going to do it. Doesn't matter. We can be there for 10 days or 10 years. When we leave, they're going to be right back at it.
I know it's a big problem over there, but I think we should just stay out of it. We don't need more deaths here.
I don't think we can lay the blame.
Iraq war veteran Daniel Seidel ran the gauntlet of IEDs in Anbar province for 2 tours. He says he feels defeated by what ISIS has achieved, but isn't sure he'd return to the fight.
A part of me wants to go back over there and fight and, take back what we earned, so to speak, when we were over there. And then another part of me says, you're lucky to have gotten out of Iraq, intact.
For now, staying out of Iraq, staying intact, is the preference the president has chosen.
Out of Iraq and staying in touch, is that, do you think, the mood of the country? Has he judged it right?
Well, certainly judging by the Americans that I've spoken to, there doesn't seem to be a massive appetite for action, although President Obama's political opponents would disagree. They would have liked to have seen him already act and act in a much more decisive way. They're building this narrative of a very weak president with no real strong foreign policy ideas and a president who dropped the ball on Syria and is doing the same in Iraq. However, I think generally the mood is one of caution, as you heard down at the Vietnam War Memorial this morning. They don't want to see any boots on the ground. So he's judged the mood properly there, I think. Certainly he's taken some other kind of bureaucratic steps, which he might hope will be enough to suffice his opponents. So things like, setting up these the potential intelligence cooperation centres, we're told, in Baghdad and in the country's north, as well as these additional 300 military advisors. Now, John, we don't know whether these advisors might be special forces soldiers, but they're only being described in very general terms at the moment. So I think he's really keeping as many doors open at this stage as he possibly can.
Kylie Morris in Washington.